New this morning, Oregon National Guard troops could soon be on the streets of Portland. This after a win in court for the Trump White House, which overturned a lower court's order barring that deployment. The legal fight, though, not over. But boots won't be on the ground immediately, as another restraining order halting the troops is still in place, at least for now. The majority of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, both nominees of President Trump's, writing this in the majority opinion. Even if the president may exaggerate the extent of the problem on social media, this does not change that other facts provide a colorable basis, they go on to say, to support his decision. The president has cited outside of Portland's facility to justify the need for federal troops. CNN's Nick Watt was at the facility last night.
Why did the judges rule this way? Well, there was damage to this building in the summer. There was some violence here in the summer. Federal Protection Service officers had to be sent in. So these two judges, two of the three judges, ruled that the president was acting within his authority to send federal troops to execute the rule of law.
Local leaders and residents continue to say Trump's description of a war-ravaged city is not the reality now. Oregon's governor said this about this latest ruling.
This decision, from the dissenting point of view, attacks the sovereign authority of states to control their militia, also takes away the First Amendment rights to assemble and object to government actions that we don't agree with.
So where does this go now? Joining me right now is former federal prosecutor Alyse Adamson. It's good to see you. Thank you for being here. This ruling, you have the majority saying even if Trump's exaggerating, there's evidence to support what he's trying to do. And then this third judge on the panel writing in the dissent that their take on that is absurd. What's your take on this ruling?
Yeah, Kate, this ruling was not surprising to me because this was very similar to the ruling we saw in Newsom. This is actually the exact same court that ruled in the Newsom case. And essentially what the court has done is said that the president enjoys a lot of discretion and power under this law. And it's a very specific statute, 12406. Now, my take on this is I think that that panel is probably correct, or at least that's what the Supreme Court is going to find, because in the Seventh Circuit, that's the appeals court where Illinois is a part of. Remember, they're fighting the same battle in Chicago. The Seventh Circuit also applied the exact same framework in denying a stay. They said basically, yeah, the president has the discretion to make the determination as to whether or not things are really bad enough on the ground to federalize and deploy these National Guard troops. So long as there's some evidence, the president is allowed to do that. So that is not what a lot of people want to hear, Kate, but that seems to be the way that a lot of judges are interpreting this law.
You know, and the thing is there's multiple legal, you're pointing to it, multiple legal battles on this front in multiple different jurisdictions and states. You mentioned Chicago, and I did find it interesting that the judges here ruling on Portland made a distinction when it comes from with the Portland case from Chicago, essentially making the point that Portland's ICE facility was forced to close for 3 weeks because of demonstrations. Chicago's ICE facility has remained open despite protests. Do you see that as a legally relevant distinction?
Yes, Kate, that's a fabulous question, and absolutely. And that's because this law that gives the president the authority to federalize the Guard, 12406, there's basically three things, and one of them has to be true for him to do that. Either there needs to be a foreign invasion, not here, a rebellion. There's no rebellion. I don't care what the Trump administration says, there's no rebellion. But the third is more interesting. It's whether or not there's basically an impediment for the federal government to enforce the law. So when we're talking about closing an ICE facility, Kate, when we're talking about ICE agents not able to effectuate arrests or transfer arrestees or detainees, that is an impediment. And that is why it is significant. And what the lower court in Chicago did not find, to your point, is any of that to have been true, at least with the evidence that was submitted to it at these very early stages in the proceedings. So that is a very critical distinguishing factor. So if Chicago, if the Trump administration is to point to situations in Chicago where ICE has been impeded, then ultimately the court may rule in the Trump administration's favor there as well.
And Clearly, this legally not over, but every step is a critical point along the way to understand. Alyse Adamson, it's good to see you. Thank you very much. John.